Hello, YouTube. Right now, I am on I-35 northbound. I'm about 90 miles south of Oklahoma City. I delivered to Oklahoma City, or just outside of Oklahoma City, this morning, and I've already been down to Fort Worth, Texas to pick up a forklift, and I am headed back towards Oklahoma City. I'm actually delivering this forklift to a city called Baldwin City in Kansas. If y'all know where that's at, that's just a little bit south of...
That is a nice looking tractor you got there, man.
Thank you very much. I just had a truck driver compliment me on the truck that I'm driving. It's I get a lot of compliments on it. It's a very nice tractor, very nice truck. If I get at least probably one or two a week, one or two people a week telling me that it's nice. But anyway, that was the truck that just passed me. That gave me that compliment. And it looks good because I just gave it a wash when I got done unloading in Oklahoma City this morning. I actually drove from Oklahoma City down to Denton, Texas, to a truck wash down there on my way to Fort Worth. I like to have a nice shiny truck, but unfortunately these things catch a lot of bugs and a lot of mud and everything else, and they get dirty quick. And just to touch on the truck wash, so to get one of these washed, I get the basic wash for my trailer, which is just basically, just getting it clean. I don't get any of the polishes or anything like that. But then for the tractor or the truck, some people call it a tractor, some people call it a truck, I will get a little bit more extensive wash. I'll have Rain-X put on the truck. It helps keep the paint from fading, and it provides a little extra protection to the body itself as well for things like fading paint. But I'll also get citrus shine on the aluminum. I have aluminum tanks and fenders. I have my chrome stacks and my chrome bumper, and they will put the citrus shine on there to kind of give it a little bit of extra protection from a little bit of the dirt and things that we may catch as we're driving down the road. But anyway, so that wash costs a little over $100. I think I paid like $109, $108, something like that this morning. The way my company works is, I don't own the company, but the way the company I work for does this is they will reimburse me that money. So that's one more thing to keep in mind, for any of you that might want to do trucking, is that you may have to fork over a little bit of your money every week for things like a truck wash. Obviously, it'd be kind of a pain in the rear to try to give 100 drivers credit cards if you're a big carrier, but since I'm working for a very small company, I have asked for a credit card, and supposedly it's in the works. I have plenty of money to do this because of my pension that I receive, but unfortunately, a lot of people out there, this is their sole source of income for their household, and they're making decent money, but they basically have to tie up you know, $100 a week of their own money, and it's going to be 7 to 10 days before they get that $100 back. You know, which is why I requested a credit card. And if I ran my own company, I would probably give my drivers credit cards for things like that, but I'm kind of trusting in that manner, and I'm sure that would bite me in the rear at some point, because I'm sure there'd be somebody who would use the credit card for things that they're not supposed to, for themselves. But basically, anything that you might need that's small for the truck. I had to stop one day and get a mud flap for the company I worked for before. I had picked up a trailer at the distribution center I was hauling from, and it was missing a mud flap. Well, that's one of the things that's required the truck to have. If I get seen driving without a mud flap, I could get pulled over and get ticketed for that. Hopefully they would give me a break if I told them I knew, and I put it on my pre-trip inspection. And I told them, you know, hopefully they would give a break if they knew that you were on your way to get one. But anyway, I stopped at a truck stop. You know, it was the closest truck stop to that distribution center, and bought a mud flap. You know, and that was that was money out of my pocket that I got reimbursed for later. And actually, that day it ended up being 2 mud flaps, because the mud flap on my truck had vibrated so much that the metal bracket had had broken off, and the mud flap fell off, the whole bracket and everything. And that was actually kind of pricey for just the mud flap, you know, because I had to buy the whole bracket and everything. So that's, you know, something else to think about. And I know the large carrier that I worked for before, they told me they would reimburse me up to $45 to wash my truck. Well, $45 is not going to wash much, and so I basically just used my power washer at home, because I was able to take my truck home, and I would use my power washer at home to wash my truck, because I don't like driving bug encrusted trucks. Right now we are traveling up the Arbuckle Mountains in central Oklahoma. It's a little mountain range in Oklahoma, right off of right on I-35, and it's the Arbuckle, Arbuckle mountains. Yeah, there's a little bit of scenery to look at once you crest them, and once you crest the top and start going down the other side. But anyway, so, you know, that's just something to think about if you're wanting to get into trucking, is sometimes you may have to put up your own money that you may not get back for 7 days, 10 days, 14 days, or whatever. Basically, it will get put on your check for the for which you are currently running. But anyway, so, you know, that's something to think about for trucking. And also, you know, as I was driving today, as I was loading today, you know, I wanted to touch on a little bit more of the flatbed specific loading. Right now I'm hauling a load that requires, let's see here, what do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 chains and 2 straps on this load. It's a forklift and the attachments for the forklift. You know, it's not hard putting the chains on, but, you know, you get dirty and you get sweaty. You know, that's the kind of stuff that you're not gonna do if you're running for a carrier that just has you back under a trailer and hook it up and go. You know, it involves a lot of manual labor, which does make you dirty. So that's one more thing you guys can think about. So on my video that I uploaded, or that I made yesterday, I'm actually in the process of uploading it now. It was almost done. I kind of touched on a little bit of forensic investigations during my criminal investigations. You know, basically solving a crime forensically. I wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit and kind of explain some of the processes. You know, most of my cases that I investigate came to me already solved, and now we are going down the Arbuckle Mountains. Just on a side note, going down the mountain, I keep my foot off the accelerator for the most part and use my engine brake, or some people call it a Jake brake, to control my speed. It's pretty handy, and it keeps my foot off the brake, and which is good for your brakes, because your brakes are powered by air. You only have so much air. Your truck can only make so much air within a certain amount of time. And if you use up all your air, you don't have any brakes. And also, if you use your brakes too much, you will heat them up, and they could catch fire, and then you lose your brakes, and then you're kind of screwed. But anyway, so back to the forensic investigations. Basically, my cases, when they came to me, they would already be solved, because it's usually things like, you know, Steven reporting that Sam hit him in the head with a baseball bat, or Julie reporting that Samantha tried to run her over with her car, or set something on fire. You know, usually people know the person that committed the crime against them, and that's what I mean by they're mostly solved. And at that point, my my task in that is to try and gather a little bit more information, whether that's video evidence, or if there's going to be anything that needs to be fingerprinted or swabbed for DNA. Basically, if we have items that we need to fingerprint, we can do it ourselves, but we also have crime scene officers that can assist with that as well. It's actually a pretty simple process, and the fingerprint kits really aren't that big. You know, they consist of a container of graphite powder, a fingerprint brush, which has very fine bristles on it, and fingerprint cards and tape. Basically, you would find something that you can fingerprint. The best things to fingerprint are non-porous, smooth surfaces. Glass is great to fingerprint, plastic bottles, aluminum cans, things like that. You know, excellent things to fingerprint. And so you dip your brush in the graphite powder, and this powder is so fine that if you get it on your fingertips, it will actually embed in your pores, and you can't wash it out. Basically, it just has to wear out, and you could look like you have dirty fingertips for a while if you're not careful with it, because that stuff it's very messy. In fact, the brushes, they start out usually with white bristles, and they are completely black after just a few uses. But anyway, so the way we would do it is we would dip a brush into the container of graphite, lightly brush the area that we wanted to fingerprint. And what happens is the graphite powder will actually stick to the grease and oils that is left behind when you touch something, and that is what forms your fingerprint. On a side note, if your hands are freshly washed, it's very unlikely that you'd leave a fingerprint. But that's basically what a fingerprint is. You know, it's just the the oils and the grease that you leave behind from your fingertips. But anyway, and then once we see a print that we would like to have examined, we would take our roll of tape, stretch out a little bit, place it over the fingerprint, and use something like, our fingernail or a card or something, or the spool from the tape to kind of smooth that out and get all the air bubbles out. And then you would carefully peel it up and stick it to index cards that's in your kit. And these index cards are specific. They're actually kind of a shiny, almost a laminated on one side. It's just it's not lamination, but they're made that way where they're just real slick and shiny. They almost look like plastic. And then the other side has areas that you can write the information on, such as the case number, where the fingerprint was found, things like that. So then what would happen is a fingerprint technician from our crime scene lab will enter the fingerprint in what's called AFIS, A-F-I-S. That stands for the Automated Fingerprint Information System. And what that does is it will compare the fingerprints that are submitted to fingerprints that are in the system. So if you've ever been fingerprinted for a job, if you've ever been fingerprinted getting booked into jail, anything like that, your fingerprints are on file out there. You're in AFIS. But anyway, so what it will do is it will kick out some likely matches. It doesn't look for an identical match, it looks for possible matches. And then a person has to then compare those possible matches, which we call hits, to the fingerprints that are lifted. Got the police up ahead and got to try and get over behind this semi, and he is slowing down, making it tough for me to get over. But anyway, the fingerprint technician would compare the hits with the fingerprints that you developed, and they're called latent prints, L-A-N-T-E-N-T prints. Basically, latent prints are fingerprints that are unintentionally left behind, basically trace evidence. So anyway, he or she would compare the hits to the fingerprints you lifted and see if they can match them up. And once that happens, then we can identify our suspect that way. DNA, if you touch something, it's highly likely you're going to leave your DNA behind. Things that get touched over and over again by multiple people, it's actually bad. I mean, you could lift up that, or you could lift DNA from that with a swab, and it just basically come back as multiple contributors. Very rarely would they be able to do anything, would the scientists be able to do anything with a sample like that. But if, let's say, a gun gets left behind at a crime scene, we would send something like that away for DNA. And there's little tricks of the trade that I'm not going to tell you about getting DNA from guns. There's just some tricks of the trade of getting the DNA from the guns, and I don't want to share it because I don't want to give up that kind of good information, because it does help solve cases. But anyway, the lab technician would take a cotton-tipped swab and dampen it with with a sterilized water, and then they would rub the area that they suspect there could be DNA. Obviously, you can't see DNA, so you're just basically swabbing the item where you think people would touch it, or if it has handles or grips like a gun, the grip, the trigger, things like that. That's what you would swab. And same thing, they would enter that into CODIS, which is CODIS, which is the, let's see here, it's an acronym for the Combined DNA Information, CODIS, CODIS, I apologize. It's the Combined DNA Index System. That's what it is. The Combined DNA Index System. And the computer would then spit out possible matches. It would say your DNA could belong to this person, and it might even, it will say it might belong to this person. At that point, we get notified, and we would track that person down, and most of the time, probably serve a search warrant to basically force that person to give up a sample of their DNA. And what we would do is we would tell them they need to open their mouth. We will take a brand new cotton-tipped swab, and we would swab the insides of their cheeks on both sides, getting a sufficient sample, and then we would submit that sample to the lab, and then they would make a confirmation for that DNA to be a match. In my last video, I talked about it taking like 6 months at one point, and that's why. It just takes a long ass time to do that. You gotta send your item away, and your items aren't the only ones that they're swabbing, so they gotta kind of triage them as they come in and get to things that might be a little bit more important in your case first. Things that might be more time sensitive. So they would swab that item, enter that DNA into CODIS to see if there is a match. Basically, if you've ever had your DNA taken, it's a possibility it might be in CODIS. I was kind of always unclear on whether, like, if we have to DNA a witness for some reason, I was always unclear of whether that actually goes into CODIS. To be honest with you, if it does, I'm kind of split on whether I really agree with that, because that's a person who is helping out with something, and now all of a sudden the government has a sample of their DNA. It just sits a little weird with me. I don't think that the government's going to do anything with your DNA. I don't think you're going to be accused of some kind of crime that you didn't do. Somebody's not going to go plant your DNA, because it doesn't work like that. Your DNA, once it is processed, your DNA actually no longer exists. The process destroys most, if not all of it, and there have been times when it has destroyed every single bit of the actual DNA, and then it becomes a computer profile. So nobody can take the computer profile and plant your DNA on some crime scene. But anyway, that's kind of an explanation on some DNA. I think next time I want to talk about a case that it was just a perfect storm of evidence that came together to actually prove the case. It was great. It was a case that had no idea who the suspect was, and it was a home invasion. It involved guns, somebody getting shot, and drug dealing. I mean, it's actually a really interesting case, and it was super interesting as to how I actually identified the suspect. If you guys want to hear something fun, yeah, definitely watch out for that one. And I'm gonna try and make that one. In fact, I'm just gonna make that one my next video. It's a really cool case. Anyway, if you guys like what you hear, hit that like button, and share my videos, and hopefully you guys find what I'm talking about somewhat interesting, and because I think things will get better. As I make more videos, I'll get a little bit better in communicating with you guys, and trust me, like I said before, I'm not BSing you one bit. I've got some really cool stories, and I just think that there are people out there that would like it. But anyway, until next time, smash that like button and subscribe if you want. Y'all have a good day.